always the ball, but besides the visual arts, Festival House was also a place where lots of music was heard. As stated earlier, the Berkshire Music Center at Tanglewood informed their incoming students about Festival House for the 1951 season. 5 students chose to stay, as well as 3 full-time orchestra members who came and returned every season until they left the Boston Symphony. 2 of them were Harold Farberman, percussionist, and Jesse Cece, violinist. A few years later, the Berkshire Music Center created a week of contemporary chamber music called the Film Concerts. The musicians in the group chose to stay at Festival House and kept returning until Festival House closed. They would rehearse at Festival House, and after a while, they were given room and board in exchange for performing twice a week. Eventually, they became the Lennox Quartet at our parents' suggestion. And this is a Christmas card that they made once they were the Lennox Quartet. There were Peter Marsh, first violinist, Teddy Mann, second violinist, Scott McCrance, viola, and Don McCall, cellist. And these are, again, another picture, and this is a Anthony Tony rendition, a painting that he did of the Lennox Quartet. Years later, Peter Marsh gave a copy of a book he wrote on Beethoven to my father and inscribed in it, quote, "To the Esterhazy of the Lennox Quartet," unquote. And I didn't know who that was, so for those of you who don't know, like I didn't, the palace of Esterhazy, Esterhazy was a Hungarian prince, and he had a palace called the Palace of Esterhazy, where he hired Haydn as the resident musician and had musical events all the time. So he was a patron of the arts, of the music. There was also a lot of folk music at the hotel. We don't know who this is, but there was an Israeli folk singer named Avshalom who came, and due to an agreement between our parents and Mordecai Bauman, owner of a summer camp called Indian Hill, they each hired Pete Seeger to sing every other week. So there he is. Pete was blacklisted at the time and needed money. He was very popular, and people came from all over to hear him. And this is some correspondence. There was a lot of correspondence between him and the parents. And if you can see, this is a drawing that he did himself. And he often would put a banjo under his signature as well. If he didn't. Other folk singers would drop in to join him, such as Odetta. And Judy remembers that he sang to her in our little house when she had chicken pox. Some of the programs were taped and aired on WTAG, a Worcester, Mass. Radio station. The head of the Newton Public Schools Music Department, Tony Salatin, sang every Friday night for the guests after the Tanglewood concerts. And Irving Burgee, who wrote many of the calypso songs popularized by Harry Belafonte, also stayed at Festival House with his family in exchange for performing once or twice a week. He would sometimes introduce new songs not yet published. Some of his songs are Deo, Jamaica Farewell, Come Back Liza. He also wrote for the Kingston Trio. He stayed at Festival House for several years and remained a lifelong family friend. And this is actually Harry Belafonte singing, though. It's his pictures. That's Irving. That is Festival House. Okay. Vanguard Records, specializing in folk music, gave Festival House records to display and to play on an amplifying machine. A Caribbean drummer named Lejeep would also drop in with his drums, usually on weekends, and would drum away on the back porch. Others that dropped in to play here and there included Randy Weston, jazz pianist, who would play African rhythms for dancing or entertainment, and Dizzy Gillespie, the jazz trumpeter. Dizzy was from Cheraw, North Carolina, and related to our head housekeeper, Elizabeth Tillman. Besides all that music, live and recorded, there was also folk dancing in the back room. Abe Connexon this was the back I think. Anyway, from Folk Dancing Studios in Greenwich Village, led folk and square dancing every Saturday and Sunday night. After a few years, Bob Sachs led it every week for room and board, as would a family friend, Maxwell Wiseman. Also, I just found out by reading through more of the material that there were also poetry readings that were held here. Poetry readings, yeah. It was a hopping place. Sometimes there would be a classical trio in the lobby, folk music in the main lounge, folk dancing in the library, and drumming on the porch. And there were also parties. And one that I remember the adults talking about was a costume party where one of the guests named Celeste dressed up as the Lennox Quartet's cellist Don McCall's basset hound Casper. Unfortunately, the picture of Celeste was lost, but everybody loved him. He was a well-loved, loving, and adorable dog. And because Don was a traveling musician, we ended up with Casper as part of our family for several years and have many fond memories of him, and so do others in this audience. The back lawn was also used for lectures and discussions of different kinds because it was such an attractive place to be. And also there were fireside chats. I would like to, about the Hoppin' Place, I just came across this letter, and I just want to read it because it just fits right in. Dear Claire and Bruno, we just want to thank you for one of the most varied and delightful weeks we've ever spent for a holiday. May I say that your staff were a delightful gang who added to the feeling that Festival House is just a big house party where everyone can relax and have fun. Anyway, I'd like to elaborate now more on the food and dining mentioned earlier. And this is my sister and our father in the dining room. Behind is the painting, Judy, that you were talking about. So as Festival House became more popular, there were up to 200 people who dined there, both guests and people who dropped in. I don't know why I did this. Oh, yes. Well, the reason this picture is here is because it has everything to do with the dining room, because Alan, who was one of our guests here sitting in the audience with his hand raised, was a waiter. And Judy, who is also sitting here, and this is a recent picture, this is not from back then, was visiting with her family as guests, and they met here. And here they are again, still together. I also wanted to mention my cousin Charles, who was also a waiter one summer, and he's from Molly's family that lived in New Orleans, and these are his siblings, Lena and Bruce. Bruce. Anyway, he's... breakfast and dinner were offered. Let's see. Box dinners were offered. I'm going to wonder what this is. I'm losing where I was. Well, okay. That's a nice picture. Let's see. Breakfast and dinner were offered. Box dinners were also offered to guests who took them to Tanglewood to eat on the lawn before or during the concert. And according to my father, this was an innovation on the part of Festival House. It was the box dinners. As mentioned before, Joey the baker made baked Alaska, and what he did was light them and march them into the dining room for the guests after a Tanglewood concert on Saturday nights. There were indoor buffets and cookouts from time to time on the back lawn. And when someone special, such as my sister, had a birthday, the kids had a birthday party with specially baked cakes. That's me, but somehow I got into here.
Somehow.
No, it's from a video that we took these clips from. And this is Pete Seeger's popularity and growing demand for accommodations at Festival House. Our parents purchased another building across the street from the Little House as a place for staff and overflow guests. Oops. Oh, there's more birthdays. See, that was, there's Wendy Field. Patty's here. Anyway, do you see? Okay. And that's another summer birthday. Okay, this is Sunnybanks. Our parents named it Sunnybanks. After Festival House ceased, we continued to operate it as a guest house for 4 to 5 years during the summer seasons and sometimes rented it to families during the winter. Judy and I helped run it one summer as teenagers. Festival House had helped Lennox become a popular resort area. As a result of the popularity of the Berkshires due to Festival House and the extension of the concert days at Tanglewood, vacationers grew in numbers and other resorts opened up. One was Avaloq and another Music Inn. As attendance grew at Festival House, many guests asked where they could get cocktails. Our hotel had been operating for 10 years without alcohol, which was fine with my parents, They weren't drinkers. But they realized that its availability would add value to the hotel. So there's their application. They applied for a liquor license but were denied. Dad was told he could go to the State Liquor Board in Boston to see their files. He went. Several residents had written requesting Festival House be denied the license. The most telling letter was written by a local priest who said Festival House was undesirable because, quote, blacks and other questionable characters stayed there. Our father went to the town selectmen and threatened to expose it in the Berkshire Eagle. They were granted the license at the end of the 1959 season, once one became available, and then they operated it during the last season or two. You know, to tell you the truth, I don't remember if it was 1 or 2 seasons, but anyway. Around the time my family lived in Pittsfield, the Commonwealth